Today we'll be going over chapters 1, section 2, and 3. We'll be going over symbolization, as well as ambiguous symbolizations. To begin, we'll look at the conditional subsets and how we can define them. On screen right now, there are the statements right here. Choose a pen color there. Choose red for now. And the statement says about if here. If Maria sings, Xavier will leave. Let's make Maria into M and Xavier into X. If Maria sings, then Xavier will leave. The conditional is the point at which if something happens, then something will happen. In this case, if Maria sings, Xavier will leave. The conditional is added there because whenever an if statement occurs, let's say if square then circle, whatever comes after the if is always the antecedent. The antecedent being the first part, followed by the consequence. Choose a better color, that's all. Green, thicker. As we continue. If can be replaced by provided that, assuming that, given that, in case, and on the condition that. These all mean the same thing. All the options here mean the same exact thing. They all represent the same thing as long as what comes afterwards becomes the antecedent. Moving forward, Xavier will leave if Maria sings. The exact same structure as prior, right? Xavier will leave if Maria sings. If Maria sings, then Xavier will leave. A common mistake here is that people read it left to right and automatically assume, it must be left to right. Unfortunately, it's not the case. Instead, whatever comes after the if statement, or the provided statement, or the given that statement, in case they're all correct equivalents, is always the antecedent. Next, we move on to the only if statements. Xavier will leave only if Maria sings. As earlier, M and X. This time we switch it around. Saying M occurs only if X occurs. What was that? Xavier will leave only if Maria sings. If I write M conditional to X as it did up here, that would be wrong. Because the only if statement reverses that rule. Instead, it becomes X to M. Maria will only sing if Xavier leaves, is a good way of phrasing it there. Even if it starts off like this, right, as over here. Whatever comes after the only if statement is the consequence. And here we have it again, X to M. And these are all the correct equivalents, of course. They all serve only. Let's do some practice ones. Given that it rains, Susan will be late. We got rains as Y. Susan will be late as S. Given that it rains. Given that. If. So if Y, S. Because it's an if statement, the Y must be the antecedent, and the S is a consequence. Let's do some practice ones. Which one of the following are symbolic sentences? Only if it rains will Susan be late. Only if it rains. That must be the consequence there. Ergo, the first one. Susan will be late provided that it rains. If it rains, let me just back on a second. If it rains, Susan will be late. Ergo, Susan won't be late. She will not be late. Not. Negation of an S. There go. Ergo, this. If it was a double negation, she is not late. Ergo, she is late. So that'd be wrong. Susan will be late only if it rains. Only if it rains? Only if. And Susan. Ergo, it must be the R is a consequence. Consequence. Given that it rains, Susan will be late. Given that it rains, if it rains, Susan's late. Perfect. Moving forward. These are more complex ones in nature, and we'll see how we can do with them. If Veronica doesn't leave, William won't either. If Veronica doesn't leave, William will not. William will leave if Yolanda does, provided that Veronica does. If Veronica leaves. If. William will leave if Yolanda does. Because of this comma right here, it separates the statement into this, if this. The way you can visualize it is square, comma, triangle. With square being all that's inside here and triangle being here. And because there's an if here, provided that this goes in front of all of this, the V of Veronica is what initiates all of that. Oh, it's Veronica doesn't. 1 second. If this does not occur. Ergo. Second one there. Because if Yolanda does, if Yolanda leaves, will William leave? If Yolanda doesn't leave, zoom in there. If Yolanda doesn't leave, then Veronica will leave only if William doesn't. We have the exact same structure here as prior. If Yolanda doesn't leave, then Veronica will leave only if blank. Because the if is first, we rule out the last option. Then Veronica will leave only if, is our other hint there? Only if W. Ergo, that must be the consequence. So we'll see number 2. If Yolanda doesn't leave, then Veronica will leave, given that William doesn't leave. Given that if, so William must leave first. Ergo, we rolled over 2 options. However, there are ambiguous statements. If Wilma leaves, if W, then Xavier stays, X. If Yolanda sings, Y. What do we have here? Well, we have 1 if here, 2 if here, and a then. If we vote it as W, then X, then Y, this is wrong. This is incorrect notation, and this is no points. As well as another main part, the if statements. You could read it as, if Will leaves, then Xavier will stay if Yolanda sings. Inversely, you could read it as, if Yolanda sings, then if Will leaves, then Xavier stays. In the first instance, I'll use a different color. I'll use a little rainbow thing color here to show if Wilma leaves, that color there. Ooh, it's nice. We go with this, if Wilma, brackets, if Yolanda sings, then Xavier will stay. The other option is, for use white, if the comma was at here, it becomes, if Yolanda sings, if Yolanda sings, if Wilma leaves, then Xavier stays. Another way of reading this is, if Wilma leaves, then Xavier stays, provided that Yolanda sings. Alternatively, you could read it as, assuming that Will leaves, Xavier will stay if Yolanda sings. Let's do some more practice. William will leave if Veronica does. Simple there, folks. If Veronica leaves, William will leave. Veronica won't leave if William does. If William leaves, then Veronica won't leave. If Veronica leaves, then William doesn't leave. Instead, Yolanda will leave. This one's a little bit more confusing, but it's okay. Because the first one's the Veronica, if, and because there's a comma here, we look at that. If Veronica leaves, then, open bracket, if William doesn't leave, Yolanda will leave. If Veronica doesn't leave, if William doesn't, then Yolanda won't. We can read it as move the if statement of William forward, because there's two ifs here. Did you notice that? If Will, no leave, then V, no leave, then Yolanda won't leave. Then you should Y. It helps us visualize what's happening and what pattern. Perfect. Typically, when there's two ifs in this sentence, whatever's the second one would come first. If Veronica doesn't leave, if William doesn't. Veronica's only making that decision if William makes that decision first. In E, William won't leave, provided that Veronica doesn't leave. Provided works in the same way as an if statement. If. So this is pretty simple here. If William leaves, then Veronica leaves. So will Yolanda. If William leaves, then if Veronica leaves, then Yolanda will leave. Yolanda will leave. Perfect. We have W for if William, then V, then Y. Because Yolanda, and then, of course. William will leave only if Veronica leaves, then so will Yolanda. This has the exact same, William will leave only if Veronica leaves, then so will Yolanda. This is the same phrasing as the previous one. Sort of. It works the same way as a correct equivalent. We have William will leave only if, so brackets, because that's how it's phrased. Veronica leaves, then so will Yolanda. Only if. Doop, doop. Perfect. William will leave only if Veronica leaves, only provided that Yolanda leaves. This one's a little more confusing to read out loud, but only provided that it's like only if. And from there, it's straightforward. William leave only if Veronica leaves, bracket. Leave only if Veronica leaves. And then will Yolanda leave. And just like that, we've covered sections 2 and 3 of Chapter 1 Logic. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to my email on screen, and have a good day.